can literally look at the odds for this one on BetMGM, and maybe I'll pull them up as we're talking about it. But my prediction is that Giannis Antetokounmpo wins MVP. And right now, that's pretty bold based off of what the current MVP conversation is. It is Nikola Jokic against Joel Embiid. Tim Bontemps did his straw poll that he does throughout the course of the year. And it was essentially like neck and neck, where Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid had probably 5 times the support that Giannis Antetokounmpo did. Giannis was the clear third guy, though. And I think that what it comes down to for me personally is, I mean, Giannis right now is having, I think, probably his best season. Like, what he's doing right now is just insane to me. It's completely bonkers. He is second in points behind Joel Embiid, who's averaging 29.6. Giannis is averaging 29.4. Giannis is undeniably one of the 5 best defensive players in the NBA. And you could say the same about Joel Embiid. Like right now, if the vote was happening right now, I would vote for Joel Embiid. But I think that there's going to be a bit of friction as James Harden is integrated to that scheme. And I think at the end of the season, we're going to look up. Giannis is leading the league in points per game. He's averaging God knows how many rebounds. What, like freaking 12 a game, 13 a game, whatever he's up to right now. I'm pulling up the number as we speak. He's averaging, I think, 12 right now. And averaging 6 assists per game and being one of the 5 best defensive players in the league. And I think that that is going to be an exceptionally difficult combination of factors to push past. And on top of that, I think we're about to see the Bucks just fly out of the gates here. Like, I think we're about to see Milwaukee take the top of the Eastern Conference and end up as the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference to end the season. So Giannis Antetokounmpo, MVP. I wrote about this as my favorite bet whenever I did MVP a while ago when he was 9-1 to win MVP. I still think that if I was betting, I would bet on Giannis to win MVP.
I don't hate it. He's been incredible. Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Might be the leading Defensive Player of the Year candidate.
Yeah, it depends on what you think of Draymond Green and his candidacy.
I just think that Draymond's missed a lot of time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and this year is going to be tricky for that, which, you know, we talked about before we started recording, is just guys have been in and out so much that I don't know. It's hard to put a pulse on a lot of things, but I will say that the top 3 guys are very clearly Giannis, Embiid, and Jokic in some order. And
Yeah.
I think Steph Curry is like the 4th guy that'll have a good opportunity here, especially with Phoenix now dealing with the Chris Paul issue. You know, he's going to be out, and I think Golden State's going to have an opportunity to potentially get that 1 seed, depending on how Phoenix goes. I mean, they haven't had any bumps in the road so far this season.
Yeah.
And maybe this is yet another speed bump that they're going to go right over. I think they have the 6th weakest schedule the rest of the way. So Phoenix is not necessarily out of it for the 1 seed. But Nikola Jokic is having possibly the greatest statistical offensive season in NBA history, and is playing above average defense, anchoring a decent defense with no help. And this is not to take away from Giannis, because I don't think Chris Middleton has been all that great this year. And Drew Holiday has been, you know, obviously had injury issues and things of that nature. So I'm not trying to take away from Giannis, but I do want to say that that the degree of difficulty for Jokic is higher.
I agree.
And what he's doing from a statistical standpoint, if we're making these arguments, you know, I think is more impressive. That being said, Giannis is he's dominant on both ends, and it's different. Like, because Jokic is not dominant on defense. He's effective, and he's above average, and you can have an above average defense with him as your center. With Giannis, There is no ceiling on your defense. I don't know. I'm of 2 minds there, but it wouldn't shock me if they go, you know, what do they have? Like 23, 24 games left. If they go 18-6 or something, which I think the Bucks could do.
Yeah.
Giannis is definitely going to be there, because I'm with you on the Sixers. I think that the transition, adding Harden in, I think you're going to see him come in and do what he did in Brooklyn the first couple games, and it's going to be tentative, and he's going to be moving the ball. You get like 6 or 7 games in, and it's going to go back to the James Harden thing. I mean, we've seen this enough. So
Can you
I don't.
really do that though with Joel Embiid? That's kind of my question.
Hell,
Like,
if I
when
would, I wouldn't let it happen. Joel Embiid's
yeah,
a better player.
I don't know. I just think that like there's going to be some early friction there.
Mhm.
Like long term,
Maybe.
like I think that they'll figure out how to make it work.
Mhm.
But like part of what has made James Harden so effective in the past is having like a rim running roll man. Joel Embiid's like a popping roll
Yep.
man, which is fine. And that's, I think, just going to take some time. But part of the value of having a popping roll man is better ability to finish at the rim uh, without that center having vacated the area, or with that center having vacated the area. James Harden's having one of his worst finishing seasons of his career so far this year. And like, look, how much of this is this hamstring injury? How much of this is him coming into the season overweight? And how much of it is just, him having checked out a little bit over the course of the last month, right? Like statistics this year, like you said, are just so all over the map that like you almost don't want to use them in some ways. But James Harden is statistically having one of his worst finishing seasons of his career, and he's 32 years old. And you wonder what this looks like, I think, to some extent. So, look, I agree with you. I think that Nikola Jokic right now, like, would I vote for him over Joel Embiid? I don't know. I don't know how much I want to make a proclamation on that without having like really thought that through. They would clearly be the top two guys right
Mhm.
now.
I
Like
think it's
at
close.
this,
It's close right now, but you add Harden into the mix,
right.
and I do think it changes the calculus quite a bit.
Right. And you're 100% right. Nikola Jokic is having a historic offensive season. He's averaging 26 points, 14 rebounds, and 8 assists. He's doing it with very little guard play. He's shooting 57, 37, 80 from the field, which is like impossible. And like when you watch Jokic, somehow the numbers like don't capture it. It feels like,
Yeah.
like he's putting up historic numbers. He's putting up numbers that like
But he
I'm
didn't
not.
play in the fourth quarter of the All-Star game, Sam.
God damn it, Dave. God damn it. But like, I guess that like when you watch this Denver team, it's just unbelievable. Nikola
Yeah.
Jokic is
Should
like
not be
he's
happening.
a
It
marvel.
shouldn't be happening. Yeah.
I just really worry that voters, people who think that way, and there are people in the voting body who think this way, unfortunately, are going to have some voter fatigue with Nikola Jokic having won last year.
It was just last year. I mean, it's funny because we heard this about
Are you
Giannis.
really going to have,
right?
I think this is what it comes down to. Are you really going to have a guy that some people don't consider a top 5 player in the league? I think
Which
that's
is
wrong.
insane. The guy's
I
been
think
the
it's
best player in
absolutely
the
wrong.
world, arguably, for like 2 years. I just
Totally. I think that you're 100% right. And I think Nikola Jokic is unequivocally a top 5 player in the league. But there are people who do not think he's a top 5 player in the league. And some of those people have MVP votes.
Mhm.
And I think that it's going to be hard to sell those people on a guy that is not a top 5 player in the league in their minds, not in my mind or in your mind, but in their minds, that guy winning MVP back-to-back years. I think it's going to be a hard sell for some people.
I didn't follow sports media at all during like the Steve Nash MVPs, but this feels oddly familiar. The difference is that you could look at Steve Nash's numbers, and aside from the assists, you could be like, oh, well, this is pedestrian. I mean, he's a great shooter. You can't say that about Nikola Jokic. There's nothing pedestrian about it. And anybody who is paying attention knows what this guy is doing. And I mean, I'm not going to throw people under the bus, but if you don't think this guy is in that top tier of player, I'm just not sure what else he could do to change your mind at this point.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, it also feels like Giannis a few years ago, where it just maybe it's just the glacial pace of mental change that it requires in the NBA circles. And it's probably because everyone spends too much time on Twitter where, I don't know, man, like they care more about what Jared Allen's wearing than what he's doing on a basketball court.
But you know what the funny thing is about Jokic and the Giannis conversation from a couple years ago? Because I think that's the one that it reminds me most of. Just like elite productivity. Some people didn't consider him a top 5 player in the world at that point, right? And they were wrong to think that as well. I think that with Jokic, where it gets weird is just he's had the playoff success. Like you could
Right.
go back during that time
Yeah.
with Giannis and say like, okay, this guy hasn't won in the playoffs yet. I mean, you can look at Nikola Jokic's playoff numbers. They're better than the regular season numbers. Like he's outstanding when the games matter most.
But he ran out of
And
gas in the playoffs. And now, even though he was the only guy out there and now it's held against him, now he's a playoff choker. It sounds like Steph Curry too, right? It's just that people pick and choose the guys that they like. And I think that, maybe it's what he looks like.
Maybe. Honestly, like I think there is a lot of like dissonance there.
Mhm.
Like just in terms of him being like an overweight white dude who just like dominates the league. I think there's like
Although he's in impeccable condition right now. I mean, he might be he's one of the handful of most in shape guys in the league. I mean, especially when you consider how big he is. You watch
in terms of like not getting fatigued, yes, but he doesn't look
an
like
endurance athlete. Yeah.
Right. And he's a better athlete than what people give credit for. Like I've written before, like you talk to people at P3, like one thing that really stood out to them is his ability to get off the floor quickly, not his necessarily ability to like leap off the floor and get as high as like Andre Drummond or someone like that.
His second
right?
jump on tip-ins, his timing is excellent. I mean, we can sit here and extol the virtues of Nikola Jokic forever, and it'll never change the mind of some people.
Yeah, until they win a title. And then it'll change.
Yep. And Giannis
like he'll become modern day Larry Bird at that point.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Giannis winning the title totally changes the script about Giannis.
Yeah. Like there's what Nikola Jokic is doing right now and what he did last year is better than anything Dirk has ever done in his career.
Oh man.
He's at a higher level right now than Dirk ever was. And Dirk is a top 20 player of all time.
I mean, like Nikola Jokic is a top 20 player of all time by the time it's all said and done. I think there are 6 of those guys in the league right now. That's a conversation for a later date. That could be a hot take, but
I think that the level of talent in the league right now is just so unbelievable.
Unparalleled.
It's so unbelievable.
My favorite thing to say is that there are no bums anymore. There's not a single bum.
No.
Period. It's too competitive.
No, there's not.
Yeah. We're getting to the point, man. The difference between your middle of the road guys and your stars, that gap is shortening. The middle of the road guys are so much better than they were 10 years ago. And 20 years ago, good grief, those guys wouldn't even make the league now. And I think we're lucky to have this sort of upward trajectory of talent in the league.
And that's something I talk about with the draft as well. Like the level to which you have to be able to enter the league to be able to play minutes now.
Yeah.
And that speaks to how good this rookie class is, that a lot of guys have really been able to step in. But I think that the talent level of the guys that are, 375th in the NBA to 450th in the NBA in terms of roster spots is higher than it's ever been by a substantial
Agreed.
margin.
It's awesome.
Yeah, but this original bold prediction was Giannis winning MVP, even though we just extolled the virtues of Nikola Jokic for a long time.
Yeah.
The reason
I like the
for
take,
me,
though. I like it.
Yeah, to shorten the take, essentially, is that I think there's going to be voter fatigue for Jokic that is unfortunate and shouldn't occur. And I hope that people go and watch Nikola Jokic more. And I think there's going to be some friction early with James Harden. And I think the Bucks are going to go on this crazy run here. They're going to win, 18 of their last 22 games or whatever and win the Eastern Conference. And that's going to lead people to go for Giannis. Dave, you are up with your first bold